glamorous life of an influencer.
Okay, am I a giant? No, I think
we're okay.
Wardrobe?
Yeah.
More sustainable wardrobe?
Almost like this person. Yeah.
Give me a thumbs up. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for another video. As you can tell, I am joined by someone else. This is Fran from the Ethical Unicorn, and today we're going to be talking about 8 kind of sustainable, ethical tips to make a better wardrobe. Yeah. More sustainable wardrobe. But I wanted to rope in Fran for this video because she knows a lot more about sort of sustainability and ethical fashion, so I thought let's talk about that and I give you a different perspective as well. But if you want to tell people a little bit about your platform and what you do.
Hello, my name is Francesca. I have a blog and Instagram page called Ethical Unicorn. So I talk a lot about ethical fashion and consumption, those kinds of things. I also talk about policy change and social justice, and yeah, I try and cover loads of stuff in the sustainable living and social justice world.
Yeah, and it's awesome, and we're going to be linking to a lot of different posts that Fran has written about some of the topics that we're going to be talking about, so make sure to check out her blog. Anyway, without further ado, grab a cup of tea and let's get straight into the video. I just want to dance normally.
This is when you want to have fun, so I'm always like this person. Imagine if you included this bit in.
It's coming to the end.
Also, that might have been a flute because they all just came.
Whenever you're ready.
Oh, cool. So I was just looking at a bird. Okay, so when you first learn about sustainable fashion, it's really tempting to want to throw out everything in your wardrobe. You know, you've realised where it's come from or maybe what it's made with, but please don't clear out your entire closet. Obviously, capsule wardrobes are great if that is a way that you want to move forward. I understand, but don't just go and give everything to charity straight away. Basically, when you give things to charity, some of it will be sold on, that's great, but a lot of it does end up getting burned. Basically, about 10 to 20% of the things that we donate end up in charity shops. Some, if it's high enough quality, will be shipped abroad, which is obviously then high carbon emissions, to be sold in other countries, and the rest, often, especially if it's fast fashion, it's kind of lower quality, it gets classified as junk, and then it gets incinerated. So obviously that's not great and kind of defeats the point of being sustainable. Try and sell things on eBay or Depop, or you know, have clothes swaps with friends, host charity sales where you sell your clothes. There are lots of ways that you can get your clothes to other homes that don't involve like doing a huge declutter and taking it to the local charity shop. Because also they have loads of donations, like they're fine.
I've said this before and I will say it again, secondhand shopping is one of the best things that you can do for a more sustainable and more ethical wardrobe. A lot of the waste that actually happens before you've even bought that item, so thinking about what you're going to do with that item afterwards is great, but if you are engaging in a circular economy rather than a linear one, then you're going to be making a much more sustainable choice. I have so many things that are secondhand now because I'm trying to give something old a new life, and there are so many great companies out there if you don't want to buy from like thrift shops or Depop or eBay that are using upcycled materials. Like Grinbag, I love them because they use upcycled materials to create new bags, and they are actually coming out with a really cool kind of scheme that I won't say anything yet because I don't know if they want to talk about it, but I will talk about that later, which is really cool. And then there's another company, I think it's in Amsterdam, called Mud Jeans, who use the fabrics from old jeans to create new ones. So they're upcycling their old materials and creating something new from them, so they're not having to, you know, put more demand on more resources and creating more waste that way.
So basically, when you do want to buy new purchases, go for smaller, more ethical and more transparent brands. There are a lot of brands, especially ethical ones, that will have a page dedicated to their sustainability principles and their ethics principles. When it comes to big brands like your H&Ms and your Topshops and your fashion brands like that, they'll often have kind of wishy-washy statements that don't really mean anything, and it's not really very transparent. They're not saying where the things are being made, who's making them, what the process is like, and basically that's because they don't know. Essentially, brands will contract out to a certain factory, whether it be in China, Bangladesh, and they'll have such a high demand that factory then subcontracts out to what they call spoke factories, which are little factories that never get monitored, never get regulated. We have no guarantee of health and safety, workers being treated well, getting paid. Like, they can't even tell you because they don't know. So if you're going with smaller brands that can tell you exactly what the stages of their supply chain are like and how they're making things, then you have a guarantee. And a lot of the times they also will be like externally audited, or they might have accreditation. And so you want to kind of look out for those certain things. The best example I can think of is a brand called Know the Origin. They do kind of like basic t-shirts and things like that, and on their website they break down every single stage of their supply chain, who's making it. They have photos so you can see what the facilities look like, and you want to look for brands like that basically, as opposed to basically like anything on the high street.
Look after and take care of your clothes properly. This means things like don't hang up your jumpers because they can really lose their shape if you're hanging them up, especially if they're weighty ones. They can really hang down and lose their shape, and then you might not like them anymore because they don't fit the way they used to because you simply didn't take care of them properly. This also means things like washing them on the correct temperatures for whatever kind of material they're made out of. So washing them on cold is going to again prolong their life for much, much longer. Also, practical things like don't leave your clothes on the floor to get kind of worn down, and you're not leaving things in the bottom of your wash baskets and all that kind of stuff. But some of the more important ones are, of course, to wash them on the right temperatures and to make sure that you are hanging only the correct ones up, and the other ones like jumpers, folding them and putting them away in your chest of drawers instead.
Plain is gone. So as well as thinking about the materials that your clothes are made of, you also want to think about what they're being dyed with. So conventional dyes, they can have a lot of heavy metals in them. There's also dyes called azo dyes that are identified as carcinogenic, and so we kind of want to avoid all of those. You want to look for clothes that are made with low impact dyes. They have less of an impact on the environment because they require less water to basically dye the clothes. They have a higher absorption rate, so that basically means they use less in terms of production of the clothes. They also don't contain heavy metals, so they're not going to be as bad for you health-wise. Or you want to look for natural dyes. A lot of people do sort of plant dyeing and dyeing things with like cabbage and onions and all these like wild and wonderful things, which is amazing. And also azo-free dyes, which aren't carcinogenic. So those are kind of the main ones you want to look for. So once you're at a point where you feel like you know your materials, then start looking at what's colouring them, what patterns are being made from what dyes, because that is important too.
Rotate your wardrobe properly. So just like with food waste in your cupboard, a lot of clothes can go to waste because you simply forget about them and leave them in the bottom of your drawers, in boxes under your bed, or at the back of your wardrobe. By rotating your clothes properly, it means that you're going to be making use of the stuff that you already have. It means that you don't forget about them and go and buy new things, and also it can be a really great way to kind of refresh your wardrobe when you don't realize that actually you have so many cool things still in your wardrobe, you've just sort of completely forgotten about them. Another way of doing this is to create maybe 2 capsule wardrobes for each season, if you can be bothered to, or just 1 capsule wardrobe for 1 year and then another for the next year, and putting some of your clothes actually away. And then when you come round to changing of the season, then you can change your capsule wardrobe depending on what you have organized for that season in particular. This is a really great way of making you feel like you have new clothes, even though obviously you're just reusing what you already have. But it's a great way of also preventing you from buying new stuff because you feel satisfied with what you have, and you kind of get that, that sort of endorphin shot from feeling like you have new clothes because you're wearing stuff that, yes, you already own, but that was, put away, and it feels like something new and exciting.
I can do it. Loud voice. This is my loud voice, everyone. When you're trying to buy sustainably, one of the first things that you can look at is the materials of the clothes you're buying. So there's the obvious stuff, which is moving away from synthetic fibers. So no, polyester, acrylic, those kinds of things. They're basically derived from oil. They don't biodegrade at the end of their life. And as we've now learned, they shed microfibers and microplastics into all our waterways. So all those things, not great. So we want to avoid those. Then when it comes to natural materials, they are better because they biodegrade, but conventional cotton is not as good as organic cotton because it still uses a lot of resources and a lot of pesticides. So when we're looking at things like cotton, we want to look for certifications like GOTS or GOTS. And looking for things that are grown organically and in a way that looks after the earth more, and that will also biodegrade back into the earth when it is is done one day. There is also a bit of a grey area when it comes to other sustainable fabrics. We'll put some links down here for ways to read up on that, because it can feel a little bit overwhelming and confusing. Basically, a good example of that is actually bamboo. Bamboo is an amazing, like, hard material. It grows really fast, it's very easy to grow, but to turn it into a fabric you have to use a lot of chemicals to get it from this really hard thing to something that you'd make a t-shirt out of. So by the end of that, it's basically the same. I'm just gonna sort my hair out and do that sentence again. So by the end of that process, it's basically what is known as viscose or rayon. Those are all kind of interchangeable terms you'll hear. And at that point, they're not actually biodegradable anymore because they've been processed with chemicals so much. I would still argue that bamboo is a better fabric than any sort of conventional fabrics that you'll find in most fast fashion stores. So if you only have access to like bamboo clothes, I'm not gonna say don't do it and feel terrible. Or if it's blended with an organic cotton, that's also better than anything, you know, in the conventional route. But just look into learning a little bit more. If you can, one of the best sort of sustainable materials is tencel. I know they all have like funny sounding names, but we'll put resources, it'll be fine. Yeah, so just do your research and try and find natural, try and find organic, try and find things that will biodegrade or are gonna last for a really long time. It looks different for every person, and yeah, so you have to kind of just do your reading and decide what is highest priority for you. I would also say though, obviously I'm not gonna say that fur is great, but also please don't buy loads of fake fur and fake leather. Basically they're made from really pretty nasty synthetic materials, especially fake fur, which also then sheds into the environment. And they're basically just other forms of plastic. So if you are going to buy something like a fake fur or fake leather, maybe try and get that secondhand as well, as opposed to putting more money into these sort of oil and plastic industries.
And the last one is to do your research. There are so many brands out there that are greenwashing and telling you that they're doing an eco edit, and they kind of hide all how really unsustainable the rest of the practices of, you know, the company are, and they try and kind of greenwash us by making us feel like we're making a better choice by choosing them because their eco edit is particularly sustainable or whatever. And it's also, I think, a great thing to do is to question a lot of information that you hear. Like for example, on the Stacey Dooley documentary, which I think is a wonderful documentary, unfortunately they mention that the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world, and that technically isn't true. So it does hurt the green movement if we're spreading kind of misinformation. And one of my favorite resources is Whitten from EcoCult. EcoCult is a really great resource for finding information that's factually very true and has been rigorously investigated to make sure that everything kind of matches up and we're giving the right information out to people. Doing your own research when you hear about a company to make sure that they are truly sustainable also helps us to feel less trapped into making those choices that we think are good but actually turn out to be greenwashing as well. Fran, she won't say it, but she is one of the best sustainable and ethical writers that I have come across, especially because she really fundamentally makes sure that everything she writes about is 100% factually true. She is really good at referencing, and that's one of the most important things if you are reading blogs, finding out where these people are getting this information from. It's so important that we are sharing the right information, and also we don't take everything at face value. So obviously everything that we're saying here, I'm going to put a lot of blog posts in the section below where you can go and investigate these ideas further as well. It's important that we question everything. It's important that we don't just kind of rely on what maybe one person says or one article writes, because otherwise we can get into those traps. You have to be careful and you have to do your own research, because you're only as aware as the information that you're trying to gather. So I would definitely recommend EcoCult, and I will put the link to the post about why the fashion industry actually technically isn't the second most polluting industry in the world down below, because measuring pollution is actually very difficult, because obviously you have to take into consideration transport costs, resource costs, water costs, labor, like all of these different kind of issues, and why it might be high on water, it might be low on transport. So that's why it's really important to make sure that we are really rigorously investigating different kind of aspects to all claims that we are promoting or talking about. And yeah, do your research, because it's super important. And I talk about it a lot, but I'm going to keep talking about it until we all do it. So yeah, I hope you really enjoyed those tips. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. We're going to link everything that we've mentioned, any brands, any blog posts or any other eco-influencers down below in the description and probably in the first comment as well, so make sure to go and check that out. Check out Fran's blog as well, Ethical Unicorn, and Instagram. We're going to be doing a few things over there, so yes. Anyway, thanks for watching. Give it a like if you liked it and comment any of your own sustainable tips. See you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.